What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley, freshly returned from my vacation. It was probably not as relaxing as it should have been. It included the usual tug of war between me trying to unplug and then my wife noting that I did a terrible job of unplugging and that it was frustrating to watch. Still, it was relaxing overall. It's good to be back insofar as you care about me being able to hit the reset button a little bit. I appreciate everyone who has tuned into these what if podcasts, those mini pods. They bombed, but hey, we're experimenting here, and that's why I decided to record something in advance of this final installment with the Southwest Division. I also had FOMO with all the news that I felt like I just needed to catch up on and give some spew my takes on. But yes, I am back. We are going to be really cannonballing into Team Look Aheads. There will be days where I release more than one podcast. But those will be up and running beginning this Friday. We've already done the Rockets, the Thunder, and the why am I blanking on the third one? There's another one up, but I can't remember what it is. But go check out the look aheads. I'll have a landing page live as well. I built that, but I like to get out like 5 or so episodes of those. Also, if this is your first time listening, if you're on the YouTube channel, hit subscribe. It means the world as we continue to build the channel. I know the What If Project bombed, but we go in depth. We have all our episodes, aim to be thorough, and we do a great job covering the entire NBA around these parts. Also, if you're not subscribed to the audio version of this, that is where we're most popular still. Head over to iTunes, Spotify, Apple, Spotify. I don't know why I still call it iTunes. Hit that subscribe button. Ratings and reviews are appreciated. It means the world, though. If you're downloading every episode, feel free to recommend us, retweet our promos on Twitter. If you shout us out on Twitter, I will engage with you and retweet those comments as well. It's all appreciated. I fucking love you all, as I note at the beginning of every podcast. It is good to be back. Some of the news we have to cover, though, is not really all that good to be back with. We'll begin with, I guess, some happy news. Robert Sarver has begun the process of looking for someone to purchase the Phoenix Suns. This felt like it was probably always the end game, even though like Adam Silver had come out and said probably nothing that was inaccurate when he's saying that NBA owners have certain rights over just employees, but was not a great look for the league. But even just handing out the 1-year suspension and the fine, I do think that there was at least an element of the league or a subset of the league, maybe not with the owners, but all the employees of the league office, including Adam Silver himself, thinking that maybe Sarver would cave to public pressure. And I know a lot of people said to us that they're actually surprised he did. I just felt like with the outrage, and it's hard to kind of step aside from the Twitter bubble that we all live in. It really kind of felt like this was always going to head to that point, or that maybe at the very least it wouldn't be swept under the rug or forgotten about like so many other controversies in the NBA are. I did chuckle in sort of a morbid way when I read the statement that Sarver had released. This is the part that stands out, and I'm not just pull quoting here. But Sarver said, as a man of faith, I believe in atonement and the path to forgiveness. I expected that the commissioner's 1-year suspension would provide the time for me to focus, make amends, and remove my personal controversy from the teams that I and so many fans love. But in our current unforgiving climate, it has become painfully clear that that is no longer possible, that whatever good I have done or could still do is outweighed by things I have said in the past. For those reasons, I'm beginning the process of seeking the buyers for the Suns and Mercury. I would just like to say, on behalf of anyone who is a decent human being, fuck you, Robert Sarver. This is him complaining, him playing the victim, him crying cancel culture without mentioning cancel culture. And I've seen like not necessarily counter arguments to this, but the whole thing is cancel culture is it's just so accountability is not getting canceled. And this is, if you want to talk about having the right to atone, to make amends, it's a lot harder to believe someone leaning on that crutch, insofar as they even should be in this situation. But when you look at Sarver, this was a pattern of behavior. It was repeated behavior, repeated offenses. And some of the claims, some of the allegations are as recent as 2021, based on the reporting that's out there. So this is something that has spanned from 2004 to 2021 that has been cyclical. It's been consistent. He is just someone who seems like a really crappy person. And it's not someone who learned his lesson. There were reports that he pushed back against the league's punishment in the first place, which was a year suspension and $10 million fine. That's not a harbinger of someone who has changed, who is actually looking to atone, who actually feels remorseful for the things that he said, for the things that he did. Shout out once again to the people that came forward, who suffered through all this over the years, who broke non-disclosure agreements at the time. I know a lot of them were thrown out the window once the law firm got involved, but it just takes a great deal of courage, a great deal of gall, of backbone to come forward and talk about what was clearly for many people just extremely painful experiences, parts of their lives. And Robert Sarver is once again just diminishing all of this and trying to play the victim here. And it's grotesque. It's just grotesque. And there's no other word for it. I would encourage people to listen to the Timeline podcast latest episode where they went into more detail about who might be among the candidates to buy the team. But I just think, look, this is good news just to get him, Sarver, away from the league. What is interesting is he owns 35% of the team, and Baxter Holmes had tweeted that he does have the right, as that sort of majority stakeholder, to sell the entire team if he wants to. And it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out in the sense that, will he look to sell the entire team? I think he might, just because theoretically it should probably drum up the total cost of the Suns, which then drums up the total money that Sarver himself is getting. And so if you're a ultra rich billionaire, or even part of a larger purchasing group, I think you would be willing to pay more upfront for the entire team, or an actual majority of the team, rather than just that minority share, but also like being the majority stakeholder in general. On ESPN, numbers were floated around at as high as 3 or 4 billion. Forbes valued the Suns at 1.8 billion. And I think some of the numbers that feel more accurate or realistic would be, if the entire team is sold, they can expect to fetch probably between 2 and 2.5 billion. If it was more, I'd be fairly surprised, but not entirely shocked, just given how much NBA franchise values have skyrocketed. But get this guy all the way away from this league. And he's not the only just culpable party here. We need to see, like, if there's still going to be people at the top who helped enable this behavior, if not partook in it, that they will eventually be held responsible. And this is also just, we've seen things happen with the Mavericks in the past. We know what happened with Sterling and the Clippers. Like, there is a toxic culture throughout the NBA when you're looking at the ownership ranks, as there tends to be when you're dealing with billionaires, or in Sarver's case, like 100 millionaires. And like, just when you get to that scale of wealth and how you got there, and there are stories floating around the league. So this is not just, oh, the NBA is really getting rid of all the immoral owners. There's so many other discussions to have. But after what came to light and what's already been known before this investigation even unfolded in full, it's good that he's leaving. And I don't want to hear anyone whining that cancel culture is unfair and you believe in redemption. That's great that you believe in redemption. Robert Sarver has not shown that he deserves the opportunity to redeem himself, or that he has any interest in doing so. This was not just him doing or saying something 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even a dozen times. These are just like dozens of like fucked up interactions that he had, instances of abuse, verbal and physical, with people who were employees that he was his subordinates, like however you want to frame it. And it was just so, I said this when I did record on vacation as an intro, like, this just crossed so many of the, immoral, like, bingo boxes off the list, because he was dealing with issues of race and misogyny, and there were physical altercations and verbal abuse and like sexual harassment. It just disgusting. And so get this guy all the way from the league. Don't allow him to play the victim. This is big. I'm happy for Suns fans. I'm happy that this should make it at least a little bit easier for Suns players to have to deal with. Chris Paul, we saw, came out and said something. The onus was always going to fall on them to answer for this, which is unfair. But Robert Sarver, can't wait for him to sell the team. And it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment. He paid, I think, $400 million for his 35% stake of the Suns. Let's say he sells the entire team. Or let's say the Suns are valued at like 2.3 billion. Let's just use that conservatively. Looking at someone who's going to get over $800 million, double up on his investment, his punishment is that he just got to, double his investment and make almost $1 billion off this. And they do sell for like between 3 or 4. Holy shit. So he is hopefully on the way out. I'm sure there's more to come from this, but shout out to Baxter Holmes as well for the reporting he did on this situation from the beginning, and as well just all the people that came forward, risked jobs, or just had to reopen these wounds that were probably never fully healed or closed, but to have to relive a really tumultuous turmoil. And I'm just endlessly impressed and thankful, frankly, but endlessly grateful, however you want to frame it, for everyone who had come forward. And just, again, it just shows a level of courage that we should all be able to appreciate. So again, let's just close with fuck you, Sarver. One of the other things I wanted to touch upon, this is it's not old news, but it happened while I was away, and it happened just after Adam and I had said that Anthony Edwards should probably be one of the more marketable stars in the league just based off his personality. He was fined $40,000 for using what the NBA called offensive and derogatory language. The video of him using it, which has since been deleted, that came out while I was on vacation, not making an excuse for what we said. Clearly, we don't know him well enough to say that he should be, one of the more marketable stars in the NBA. If you have an issue with the fine, these things and the scale of them are usually collectively bargained. I think the real issue, aside from the fact that Anthony Edwards used this homophobic slur, is I'm not like the classification of this offensive and derogatory language. Like, let's come out and call it what it is a homophobic slur, anti-gay language. Like, let's be more specific about it, not generalize it. Members of the LGBTQIA plus community deserve to feel like their fandom matters, that this is a league that they can root for. And anytime this happens, that's a big L for the league when you're looking at their culture and how they want to present themselves. I know Anthony Edwards is young. That's part of the problem. The casuality with which these homophobic slurs are still tossed around, just in general. I'm not talking about NBA locker rooms specifically, even in locker rooms at all specifically, just in life. Like, they're still, like, the homophobic slurs are just used like way, and all this derogatory language that could be aimed at demeaning or insulting the LGBTQIA plus community. That's like, it's damaging, and it's still just all too prevalent, and it's disgusting. There should be, I don't know if you want to call it harsher punishments here financially. They're all going to be, for most of these guys, a drop in the bucket when you look at how much they're making. Like, maybe there should be just classes, like they should have to be forced to go through. And I don't want, forced feels like such a crappy way to spin this. You want something good to come from this, and that's for the players to learn something, and for the other players around them, and for other people to learn something from this. And so should they have to, undergo, it's like, I don't want to call it sensitivity training, because this isn't something that you should have to grapple with emotionally or mentally. Like, LGBTQIA, like that community, like they deserve to feel safe, and they deserve to exist. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. So it's just it still makes my skin crawl that we're in the year 2022, and this is just one form of, prejudice among many that are going to make me sick still. And I just don't think it should be thrown out the window or just written off. And we've seen other players use this, even something like Nikola Jokic, I think in 2018, had an incident with using a homophobic slur. And then Aaron Gordon coming out, and it was kind of tough. He had thumbs down, quote tweeted, and then deleted it, thumbs down to the Anthony Edwards fine. And then he tweeted something along like to the effect of, how can I be homophobic? And then deleted that. Dude, unless the thumbs down was him trying to show that he was not a fan of what Anthony Edwards said, like, shut the fuck up there, because that's just adding to this. Again, it's clearly then, if those are the thoughts that Aaron Gordon has on this, that Anthony Edwards shouldn't be fined for using a homophobic slur on camera, like there's clearly then a bigger issue in the league, and that maybe certain players need to be more properly educated on this matter, and to understand that even if they're thinking it's this throwaway comment, it's not. And to see people with their platform, with their scale of, fame, even if you want to call it, like, we're talking about Anthony Edwards, the rising superstar. Aaron Gordon's like the fourth best player on his own team or whatever, however you want to frame that, like that's still a pretty big platform. He's still a recognizable face. And his brand's probably even a little bit larger than someone who might be the fourth or fifth best player on their team just because of what we know about him from the, his scale of recognition from the dunk contest days. But that's wildly disappointing. And so this is still clearly an issue. And I think it needs to be addressed more, even if you don't even want to say forcefully, let's say at least convincingly, specifically, to where it's just not looped under this offensive and derogatory language. It's something different. It's showing a prejudice against a huge group of people, of important fans that the league should be trying to ensure not just like feel safe in life, but feel like they could just root for this league without having to grapple with a player from a team that they might root for, a player that they just want to root for, using this language off camera when they're not going to be caught. Like this shouldn't be these homophobic slurs, all this language, all this prejudice should not be as common as it is, as casual as it is. So those are my thoughts on that. And it's not to say Anthony Edwards cannot redeem himself. And I would encourage everyone to listen to an episode of the Dane Moore podcast. He covers the Timberwolves. His podcast is great in general, but he spoke with Chris Hine, an openly gay sports reporter who covers the Wolves. He's among the beat writers, I believe. They had I went and listened. They had a fantastic conversation about this. And I thought Hine did a great job just unpacking everything. And it was awesome to hear his perspective. So don't listen to some just random ass person like me ramble on about this. I'd encourage you to check out that podcast, but that's where I sort of land on that. We have a lot of injury news to get to as well. Robert Williams III, another knee issue for my guy here. He will undergo arthroscopic surgery or procedure on his left knee, and he's expected to need 4 to 6 weeks to recover, which means that he will miss part of the season. This is an issue that's come 6 months after he had that initial left knee surgery. He played through pain during the NBA Finals. Woj said that the procedure is being described as a cleanup, and it is expected, quote, to allow Williams to return to full strength early in the regular season. The Celtics, they've already lost Danilo Gallinari. Now you're losing Robert Williams III. It's a loss. I think they'll be fine. They have the depth in the front court to weather this overall. They probably are going to, they have Al Horford and Grant Williams. That's going to help them a ton. Luke Cornett's probably going to have a triple doubles now for forever, I guess. They did cut Bruno Caboclo, so he would be out of the front court consideration there. It's just something to watch because Robert Williams III has been dealing with his left knee specifically. He's been dogging him since the end of the 2020-21 season, I believe. And so to have this many knee issues, even though he's so young, and then also just you lose an element from your offense without him for a team that's doesn't generate a ton of raw rim pressure overall. The Celtics were 22nd, the share of their field goal attempts that came at the rim last season. Now you lose someone who is just your best pick and roll option when you're looking at the raw rim pressure. Al Horford is more of he's going to pop off screens. Ditto for Grant Williams. Same thing for Luke Cornett there too. Again, I don't think it hurts them a ton, especially because Al Horford and Grant Williams are like good and dynamic in those situations when you're looking at what they can do from the perimeter, but you're going to miss Williams. And he's just one of the best switch defenders as a center in the league. And then you also look at what he's able to do as a decision maker on short rolls or off the rolls in general. This isn't someone who's just catching and finishing lobs or just being able to finish the rim. Like he can make passes on the move and he's a good screen setter. That's big for the Celtics. And after already losing Gallinari, who I don't think would have factored into the center rotation, but knowing how the Celtics like to play a little bigger up front, losing someone who's 6'10" and then losing a Robert Williams like 6'9", but has like the athletic pop to make it seem like he's 7'8" or whatever when he's on the floor having that presence. It really just sucks. I did miss while I was gone. Dennis Schroder signed a 1-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers because they clearly needed more guards. I don't think this is insignificant, and I'm sure the jokes you saw about him turning down, he's making like 2.8, a little over that $1 million this year. That's probably about an eighth, a ninth, maybe a tenth of what he would have, less than a tenth of what he would have made in his 4-year, $84 million deal with the Lakers that he had turned down a couple years back. I don't mind the flyer in general for a minimum salary. He gives you Dennis Schroeder's he's probably too high usage for the Lakers, but if you want to have him run some second units, He did show that final year in OKC, shot 41+% on catch and shoot threes. He's been a little over 35% on catch and shoot threes for the past 2 seasons, one of which he spent with the Lakers. That's not really high enough to be locked down. He does give you some rim pressure on the ball, needs to get rid of those junky in between pull-ups. He had the year in OKC when Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander were both there, where he absolutely tore it up. But aside from that, he's been just sort of mediocre to sub-mediocre from those areas. It's interesting, though, that the Lakers sign him, trade for Patrick Beverley. They already have, Kendrick Nunn is like the hottest thing since sliced bread in Los Angeles, apparently, right now, when you talk to people. And then Lonnie Walker IV is just sitting there. What does this mean for Russell Westbrook? Why would the Lakers do that? If I was to paraphrase Brian Windhorst, add another guard to the fold. Do I think this makes it more likely Russell Westbrook is traded? I'm going to say no. I do think it makes it more likely that the Lakers decide to bring him off the bench, which is something that seemed like it was on the table from the moment they acquired Patrick Beverley. Maybe that's something that if they don't explore right out of the gate, they explore a few games or a little bit more into the season. I don't hate the flyer for the Lakers, but it is just like they're setting themselves up for memes here if they don't trade Russell Westbrook, and it certainly intensifies the speculation. There was the report today that the Lakers and Pacers talks fell apart for a Heald Turner trade that would have put Russell Westbrook in Indiana. The Pacers wanted 2 unprotected firsts, 27 and 29, and the Lakers balked at that. I kind of understand both sides there. Like the Lakers, if it's me, I just do it because I think Miles Turner is really good. He can not only play with Anthony Davis, but you could close games with Anthony Davis, and that would actually work. Buddy Hield's valuable to that team as sort of a knockdown shooter who can score. It's functional shooting. Not a lot of shooters score in motion with LeBron James. We've seen in the past a lot of guys just really planting themselves at a standstill, but Hield has the ability to hit some pull-ups off the dribble, to fly around screens, to really fan out in transition. And I don't think his deal is that terrible. The Lakers don't want to put long-term money on their books, and Hield has guaranteed money for 23, 24, where the Lakers could have near max space. I don't know if they're still hoping in light of Redacted's most recent stupid-ass tweet that maybe trade talks with the Nets could reignite. I understand not wanting to give up the rest of your future draft equity without bringing back a real star in return. And Miles Turner is going to be a free agent. If you don't think you can keep him, that's something to consider. I'd probably do it. Certainly if I'm the Pacers. If I'm the Pacers, I might even consider it if you can get one pick in a swap where it's like a 26 swap and then the 27 first. That's something I might still consider. Maybe they revisit that. Maybe there's another deal that materializes, but the Lakers I'm holding off on their team look ahead specifically because I think that their roster's going to change. So they'll probably be one of the last teams that we do for anyone who cares about what happens with scheduling podcasts. The next bit of depressing news, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has a grade 2 MCL sprain in his left knee. He will be out for at least OKC's first 2 preseason games and reevaluated in 2 weeks. That just sucks. This season at OKC is going from enthralling for me as a national observer to just like, oh, we're about to fucking watch them shut down guys again and really slow play this. Chet Holmgren's out for the year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander missed the final 10 games of the season with a right ankle injury. Now he has a sprained MCL in his left knee. I imagine the Thunder will continue to bring him along slowly, not just because they're not trying to win this season, but he is also, until this trade speculation proves to be accurate, he is their future. He and Chet Holmgren, I would say even more so than Josh Giddey. Without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, does he miss some games to start the regular season? I don't know. This doesn't seem too serious, but it sucks. If he does miss the start of the regular season, that will be really a test of how far Josh Giddey has come, and can he sort of lead the charge as a primary playmaker and perhaps be more aggressive as a scorer. But I want to see Shai play a bunch this season. I still think he's one of the most underrated players in the league, even though a bunch of fans from different teams are really lusting and pining after his services on the trade market for him that should not technically exist, because publicly he has not requested a trade, and everything he said runs counter. And even the way that the Thunder have acted runs counter to that logic. They have all the picks in the world. They made a consolidation trade for Ousmane Dieng. They signed Shai to a 5-year extension. Not that they wouldn't have done that even if they were looking to trade him. This just seems like we're rushing to talk there, and my thoughts are well documented. You go check out a previous podcast, or go check out our Thunder Look Ahead, which is up on YouTube and in your podcast feeds, where we get into that with Olivia Punchall, formerly of Daily Thunder, a little bit. But yeah, this doesn't seem too serious for Shai, but it is something to monitor. He's dealt with stuff. Some of that has probably been overly cautiously handled. That's a terrible way to frame it. The Thunder have probably been more cautious than they need to be with some of his injuries, or invented some of those injuries. but it's just something to keep an eye on because Shai is like part of what makes his game so captivating is his ability to just change these speeds on a dime. And if he's dealing with some knee stuff or that becomes habitual issues where he's dealing with ankle and knee issues, that could compromise him a little bit on the offensive end. Finally, Lonzo Ball will be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks after a second left knee surgery. The first one happened 8 months ago to pair a torn meniscus. That was in the same knee, that left knee. This is also the third surgery Lonzo has now had on his left knee. This is big for the Bulls, who at full strength, they're probably a better team than people are crediting just because they forgot like how long the Bulls were good last season. But there was a material change in the way they were able to operate, not on offense as much, but on defense when Lonzo first exited the lineup. Remember, the day after Christmas, I think it was, he went into COVID protocols, and then he was dealing with a knee injury shortly thereafter. After he came back for a bit, the Bulls were blown out into two of like his final games. And then he's done for the rest of the season to deal with that left knee injury. Losing him is huge. They'll break it down. Before Christmas, the Bulls were 19-10, 9 games over 500, had a top 6 net rating, were in the top 8 of both defense and offense. After Christmas, which is when they first started missing Lonzo Ball, and then he really only played in, how many games was it? I'll check really quick. After Christmas, he only played in a total of 6 games. But after Christmas, they still were over 500 in general, 27-26, but they were 21st in net rating and dropped to 27th in points allowed per possession. So they went from 8th in points allowed per possession before the Lonzo injury / entry into health and safety protocols to 27th. That's a huge drop off. If you're going to have a healthy Alex Caruso, if Patrick Williams is even going to be healthy and you expect to see a bunch of progress from him, that should help you sort of navigate those waters. And just having Goran Dragic, having DeMar DeRozan, having Zach LaVine, if he's healthy, you'll be able to make it work on offense. But still, defensively is where I'd be more concerned because Lonzo and Caruso are part of what allowed the Bulls to play so aggressively early on and would be part of why they're able to play so aggressively now, or why lineups where DeRozan at the 4 might actually work. And I think overall, if just for this team, you want to see more of what should be their best lineups, which is not a luxury we had last season. And so I'm probably lower on the Bulls, even with a healthy Lonzo. Then I don't even know if it's consensus, but I'm a little bit lower, even when considering their peak from last season, just looking at how much the Eastern Conference improved in general and how deep it sort of seems at the top now. But in the 189 possessions, which is not a lot, but the 189 possessions that Vooch, DeRozan, LaVine, Caruso, and Ball played, and looking at this roster, that's still their best 5-man unit to me. You could try and sandwich Patrick Williams in there for somebody, but who? After the season DeRozan had, it would have to be Caruso or bust. And, I'm just more intrigued defensively by Caruso Ball pairing than, if you have Williams at the 4 and then having Ball in the backcourt with LaVine. But that unit, Lonzo, Caruso, LaVine, DeRozan, and Vooch, plus 20.6 points per 100 possessions. They just only played 189 possessions. Again, not a lot, but the Bulls didn't have a ton of continuity to begin with. Their most used lineup only logged 521 possessions. And even that unit that I outlined that didn't see a ton of time together was their 4th most played lineup on the season. So want Lonzo to get healthy, but that's a long time to miss. And he's already missed so much time that when he does return, what is he going to look like? Is there going to need to be a grace period there? If you're the Bulls right now, not only do you need, let's not forget LaVine is dealing with knee stuff, but not only do you need LaVine to stay healthy, Caruso to stay healthy, but you need, and Williams to stay healthy, you need meaningful contributions once again from Ayo Dosunmu, and then Patrick Williams to be probably even better than he showed when he was healthy last season. And you probably at this point need to bank on just hitting somewhere that we're not talking about. Is Goran Dragic more effective than we're thinking right now? Does Vooch have a bounce back year as a scorer? He did fine from 2-point range last year, but does his outside shot return? Does Kobe White all of a sudden make strides here? They need one of, we talk a lot about Williams and his development, and then Caruso and Lonzo remaining healthy, even Zach LaVine remaining healthy. And we talk probably a little bit more about the backup 5 situation now. You brought Derek Jones Jr. back. You signed Andre Drummond. You have Tony Bradley, still floating around this roster. But you now all of a sudden kind of need to hit on can Ayo Dosunmu just explode again? Or can we get development from Kobe White? Or is Goran Dragic, or even a Dalen Terry? Like, will we see him at all this season? Like, you're going to need one or two just, I don't want to say unforeseen developments, but just one or two silver linings that we're not really focusing or zeroing in too much on right now, that we're not counting on right now, to probably hang with the upper crust of the Eastern Conference, which just includes the Cavs after trading for Donovan Mitchell, a healthy Sixers squad, the Celtics, even with the injuries they're dealing with, the Bucks with Chris Middleton coming back, the Miami Heat are still floating around there. I'm still pretty high on the Toronto Raptors, even though I have questions about their half court offense. It's just going to be a bloodbath through the top 6 of the East. And there's no spot there, even if the Bulls were healthy, I would say, where they would be guaranteed one of those 6 spots. I mean, like, if we're being brutally objective, I mean, top 6, my definitives would be Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. I'm going to throw Toronto in there. And then, like, Miami, I would have to put them in there. And then just like Atlanta or Cleveland or Brooklyn. Yeah, that's just 7 teams, and I didn't even get to the Bulls there. And like those 8 teams, what should be the top 8 teams in the East, barring any surprises: Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Toronto, Chicago, Brooklyn, Atlanta, and then throw Cleveland to be top 9. Holy hell. Like, there's some variance there. Like, I have no idea what the fuck the Nets are going to be, and I would never bet on them. But the Cavs or the Hawks specifically could be due for a major jump in raw win totals from the 43/44 that they won last year. And then you have the Bucks, Heat, Celtics, Sixers, who are very much in the not going anywhere persuasion. I think the Raptors, having just won 48 games, they're even better. Maybe they don't win as many games, or maybe it's still dead on. It's another 48 games, but they're just better. They're deeper than they were last season. And so the Bulls, my point here is the Bulls need Lonzo Ball. I think there's aspects of their team where they are better without him than we saw last season because of all the other stuff that they were dealing with and maybe some internal development they could get. But he is just mission critical to their defensive success. It's good to be back. I missed you all, even though I guess I didn't really leave too much. Please remember to subscribe wherever you're getting this podcast: YouTube, Apple, and Spotify specifically. Download every episode. Subscribe on every platform on both YouTube and then a podcast player. It means a lot. Throw out recommendations. Shout us out on Twitter. Retweet the promos I put out there. Again, it really all means the world when you can pitch in and help grow the community. Join our Discord, the link to which is in the podcast description, along with all of our socials. Until next time, and as always, I leave you with the shout out to the one, the only, the glorious Frank Ntilikina. And I don't know why I'm making this the outro, because you're about to listen to some NBA what ifs.